Okay, so we've moved our way a little bit further south. We are kind of on the boundary between the city of Thunder Bay and Fort William First Nation. So what we're going to be doing here is we are going to be working our way across this bridge. You can see there is a rail line beside us, so it is a still active rail line. So this would have been the route of the Grand Trunk. Today it is part of the CN Kashabowie Subdivision. It is known as the Mission Spur because it runs into Fort William First Nation, which used to be known as the Mission. So this bridge is the only swing bridge in the area, and this is what most people refer to it as, the swing bridge. So this bridge was built between 1907 and 1908. It was completed just before the railway line opened in 1908. It is 530 feet long and approximately 30 feet high. So we're passing over the largest river in the area here, which is the Kaministiquia River, which you can see here looking to the east, where it eventually empties into Lake Superior. The Kaministiquia is an indigenous word that basically means river with many mouths, and so eventually the river splits into three further up: the Kaministiquia, the Mission River, and the McKellar River. So basically this bridge was designed with navigation in mind, because there were ships that used to frequently cross through the river here. Here you can see basically the portion where it would open. I believe it still has to open, but it was funny. So this is a redo. We did this previously in another episode 4 years ago, and a comment that somebody made on social media, and this person was involved with CN, and apparently the bridge last opened about 2007 or 2008, and they commented that that pigs would fly before the bridge ever opens again. So here you can see the control house up on the top. And so originally the bridge would have been operated by a hand crank, and then it was eventually mechanized. Here you can see one of the deflection piers, and there's one on the other side. And so basically those were designed to try to keep the ships in the lane, in the channel, as they pass through the bridge. So this, again, this is the pivoting side. So this is the side that would have opened, and the opening would have been just over there. So just beside us here, just to my right, there used to be a grain elevator right where you see that tugboat there. So that tugboat is one of the oldest that was in use here in Thunder Bay. That's the James Whalen. There's a whole story with that I'm not going to get into, why it's high and dry on the old grain elevator dock. So here again you can see the opening here. So now we've reached the other side, and so what we're going to do is eventually we're going to work our way to the other side and have a look over there, and then what we're going to do is we're going to get some side shots of the bridge as well. All right, so we've moved our way over here to the west side of the bridge, and we're going to be sort of traveling in the opposite direction to the south. I do apologize if you're going to get a big screen full of glare. I'm going to try to keep my head pointed down. So over here on the west side, you can see the river, the Kaministiquia, continues to the west. Here again, you can see the deflection apparatus, deflection pier on this side. You can see the concrete work over here. Now you'll notice that there is a road, a deck portion of the bridge, and there is a little interesting story about that. So when the bridge was about to be built by Grand Trunk Pacific, they entered into agreement with the then city of Fort William, which is now part of Thunder Bay. And so the agreement is that in return for land, Grand Trunk would basically construct and maintain a vehicular or pedestrian section of the bridge. And what's interesting is It's obviously been in use since then. I can remember in my younger years, and even up until more recently, it wasn't built the way that it was. It was actually constructed of these metal plates, and driving over here was kind of a little bit sketchy at times. My kids, when they were little, they used to call it the Bumpy Bridge. Now, unfortunately, what happened was in 2013, there was a very serious fire on the bridge, and unfortunately what ended up happening is it didn't damage the railway portion of the bridge. It actually damaged the roadway portion because it's kind of cantilevered out on the side. And so what ended up happening was CN ended up in a protracted legal battle with the city of Thunder Bay because basically CN felt that they shouldn't have to repair the bridge because you know, this agreement that had been signed in 1906 at a time when it was just sort of horses and buggies and occasional cars, and now there was a great deal of traffic, as you can see, coming over on the bridge. And basically the city and Fort William First Nation, who obviously are located just to the south here, and it's a very important artery. There's a lot of traffic that goes on here. I travel this bridge every day. I live on the south side of the city here, so I'm very, very intimately familiar with the bridge itself. So there was a protracted legal battle, and what ended up happening was it actually made its way almost to the Supreme Court of Canada. They rejected the appeal by CN, and so what happened was that the courts initially ruled that CN was ruled in favor of CN, but eventually the Court of Appeal, Ontario Court of Appeal, ruled, Superior Court of Justice, I think, ruled that CN did have a legal obligation to repair the bridge. And so finally in 2019, after being closed for 6 years, the roadway portion of the bridge reopened for vehicular traffic. And again, it is very, very busy. There is a lot of traffic running between the city and Fort William First Nation. And again, just not people like that. There's people like me who live on the south side of the river that depend on this bridge and use this bridge all the time. Again, as I mentioned, the bridge has not opened for a very, very long time, and it is very doubtful that it will ever open again. Okay, so we're here on the northeast corner of the bridge structure, so you can see a nice side profile of the bridge. Again, just over here you can see the basically deflection pier, so again channeling the ships into the proper channel to pass under the bridge. Underneath you can see some of the remains of some of that apparatus to guide the ships into the proper channel. Below you can see, and I'm going to be showing you this on my phone as well here, you can see the center turning pier of the bridge. And so where the bridge would have pivoted on, and then you can see the two piers on the other side. You can see the remains of the concrete abutments on either side, and you can see very well the truss portions of the bridge itself with the control house on the top. So again, as I mentioned previously, this bridge last opened in about 2007 or 2008. It used to open regularly because just beyond here is, and I'm going to show you after, I'm going to show you a map of the bridge. Just beyond here, just a little bit further up the river, there used to be a turning basin. So ships used to come through here, turn around, and reverse course back down the river. And I actually have kind of a bit of a funny story about that. So my dad, I mentioned in a previous episode, used to work at a grain elevator just to the east over there, Saskatchewan Pool 5. And I remember him telling me a story about one day they had to come back into work after their shift because they had a ship coming in and they had to load the ship. So they were going to do some overtime. So my dad came back to work, and he said as he was coming into work, he saw the ship passing by going up to the turning basin to turn around. And then, you know, they were at work and they're waiting and they're waiting and they're waiting, and the ship's not coming back. And so as it turns out, apparently the ship got stuck in the turning basin. And so, you know, in my dad's benefit, he ended up getting, you know, paid for, you know, standing around waiting for the ship to show up. So anyway, if you do go to my website, and there's a link in the description, you're going to be able to find some period pictures of this structure, and you're going to basically see what it looked like historically. Now there was some work that was done on these piers, if I remember correctly, this past summer. That CN did some work on the piers to repair the pier. So again, it is an active rail line. You can see all of the traffic that's going over the bridge as well, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that situation, or I have talked about that situation in the previous segment. All right, so now we're heading north from the bridge behind us. So you can see the rail line here. Again, it is still active, part of the Kashabowie Subdivision, the Mission Spur. And so if you can imagine during the Grand Trunk days, and again, I'll show you a map, this line did not curve that way. That was done later. Eventually this would have curved straight down here, basically following the road here to the north. Again, we have to be careful here. Because there is a great deal of traffic. You can actually see a piece of rail line here that has been disconnected and basically has been abandoned. We're gonna take a look at this in the next segment. So basically this would have connected up that way. It was basically another little spur running into what was sort of an industrial area just over here. And so this would have connected up with, at the time, the Canadian Northern Line, and the Grand Trunk line would have just been to the north of that. I mean, the Grand Trunk line that was coming out of the station, which we previously looked at, right? So you have this rail line. Maybe I'll go up here so I don't get run over. You have this rail line coming up the bridge, running straight up here, and then you're going to have this line that's coming in right from over here. So maybe we should pause right now and show you those maps. Okay, so maybe it's safer for me with all the traffic here to walk along the boulevard here. All right, so again, rail lines coming straight up here. As we're going to talk about in the next segment, the underpass that you see up there was not present. That was built in 1937. We just had a snowstorm, which you're going to hear me talk about in some of the other segments. So we're a little behind in some of the road cleanup. We have to clean up the boulevards and sweep the road. I'm sure that's coming in the weeks ahead. Okay, so again, the rail line is coming up here, and then right in here, right through where this junkyard is beside us here, scrapyard, is basically you're going to have the line that's coming in from the station. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to pause, and then what we're going to do is we're going to resume and basically take a look at the line as it heads to the north.